Hey guys, this is Brother Scott with the Potter's House, and this is another short video teaching of our Fingerprints of Yahweh video series. We've not done one in about 2 weeks. Been working on some other projects, but I want to pick up kind of where we left off at, and here again, if this is the first one that you're watching, I believe there are 4 more ahead of this one that is going to give you the idea and the reasoning why we call this the Fingerprints of Yahweh teaching. And that begins in Genesis chapter 1 at verse 14. And then it goes to where we're looking at or have spent some time in Leviticus 23. Now, here again, this is not an extensive, in-depth teaching series. We're doing this series as kind of a beginner series, or something maybe that you can share with someone who's interested in the appointed times, the feast days of Yahweh. And these are, here again, just short, maybe 14, 20-minute teachings to kind of lay a foundation or give someone some insight that they may not have known before. But I do want to go, we're using the King James Bible because probably most anybody that's watching this may be more familiar with the King James. And also, this way someone can't come back and say, well, you're using a version of the Bible that's kind of slanted toward your way of thinking or toward your understanding. So this is several of the reasons we're using the King James. I personally also like the English Standard Version, and I like the Complete Jewish Bible. But that's neither here nor there. But let's go to Leviticus 23, and let's start at the beginning, verse 1. We've already covered some of this. We're not going to rehash it. You can go back and watch the other videos that are in this series. But it says, and Yahweh spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and saying to them concerning the feasts of Yahweh, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations, even these are my feast. And I will just stop right there and say here, and just reiterate this fact, that one of the things that we are taught or said to over and over and over again are, if you're attempting to keep these feasts, you're gonna hear a lot of, well, those are Jewish things. Those are just for the Jewish people. And here again in Leviticus 23, in verse 2, Yahweh even declares, these are my feast. They belong to Yahweh, not to the Jewish people. We can, or not just to the Jewish people. We have to understand, I think we see this in another one of the videos, that the Jewish people would be the people of Judah. So, but now that's over. That pretty much, that word Jew covers just about every Israelite person there. They're all known as Jews to the world. Okay, then verse 3 says, 6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of rest, a holy convocation. You shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of Yahweh in all your dwellings. So we looked at our last 2 videos, I believe. We did look just at the Sabbath. And here again, we didn't go into real depth. There's much more, and maybe later on we'll do another thing when we look more deeper into these appointed times, these feast days. But the last 2 of our video series of the Fingerprints of Yahweh, we looked at the Sabbath. Verse 4, these are the feasts of Yahweh, even holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons. And then it begins with verse number 5. In the 14th day of the first month at even is Yahweh's Passover. And so this is what we're going to look at briefly today is Yahweh's Passover. And so let's go to, and we're not going, like I said, these won't be long videos. But if we go to Exodus chapter 12, we're going to look at some of the scriptures that have to do with the Passover. And then we'll look at these today. And then our next Fingerprints of Yahweh's, we will carry this over into what is known as the New Testament or the New Covenant. And we'll look at, because there's a lot of things that we'll look at and take apart and probably really dig a little bit more into the Passover, since we are close to entering into the Passover season. And it depends on what calendar that you're working on. The calendar that I follow is probably the most popular calendar, and the Passover will fall into April. And this is, we're nearing the end of February right now. For some, they'll be doing Passover in March. So we may take a little bit longer, a little more time looking at the Passover. And then we'll look at unleavened bread and first fruits that all kind of fall into that week. But Exodus chapter 12, starting in verse 1, and Yahweh spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you, this month being the year of Abib, more popularly known now as Nisan. Verse 3, Speak ye unto the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb according to the houses of their fathers, a lamb for an house. Now what I want to look at in this verse is probably the only phrase that we look at today, is they shall take. This they shall take, or shall take, is the Hebrew word lakach, and it means to take, but it also means brought unto, but it also means to lead. And this is something I want you to remember as we look into the Passover, especially as we get into the New Testament, when we look at the Passover, that this word means to be brought unto, or to lead. And we're going to see this actually playing out, these meanings playing out as we look at the Passover in the New Testament. And let's drop down to verse 5. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. You shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats, and ye shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month. And the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. Okay, now verse 6 is another area that we're going to look at as we get into the New Testament and looking at Passover. Especially how that they shall keep it until the 14th day. Well, they're going to examine this Passover lamb and make sure that there's no spot, that there's no blemish, that there's no defect in the lamb. Here, this is something else that I want you to keep in mind when we look into the New Testament and we'll begin to look at Passover during that time. Verse 7, They shall take of the blood and strike it on the two side posts and on the upper doorpost of the houses wherein they shall eat it. And they shall eat the flesh in the night, roast with fire and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. And then let's go to verse 13. And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where ye are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. So here again, we're going to also look at some of the things here in verse 13 as we get into the Passover. In verse 14, This day shall be unto you for a memorial, and ye shall keep it a feast to Yahweh throughout your generations. Ye shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. And so we're going to look at this too, because here again, and today, in modern Christianity, the majority of congregations and churches want to keep Easter instead of the Passover, and they're going to say Easter is when he resurrected. And we're going to probably look into Passover and to unleavened bread and first fruits. We'll do just as they fall. But most of Christianity, the majority of the modern Christianity, is going to say that Yeshua was crucified on a Friday. They call that Good Friday. And he resurrected on Sunday. And they're going to, but you cannot get 3 days and 3 nights out of that scenario. And so we may look a little bit at that too when we come to it. But if we look at what verse 14 says, ye shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. So are we to keep Passover? The answer is absolutely 100% yes. We are to keep the Passover. Are we instructed in the new covenant to keep Passover? The answer is 100% yes. And we're going to see that as we look at the Passover in our next teaching video in the Fingerprints of Yahweh. But I wanted to, here again as we've done with the Sabbath, this short video is just to show you and lay a foundation in the Hebrew scriptures of Passover, where it began with. And I'm sure there can be others that would take you even deeper than just here, but we're not looking to go deep into this. We're looking to just stay simple when we're looking at these feast days of God, not hidden messages so much, or even going back further into Genesis and stuff, finding Passover in there. But we just want this to be simple for a beginner. So things that you need to remember as we look into it is the phrase shall take. We're going to look at verse 6, and ye shall take it, keep it up until the 14th day. So they're going to bring it in on the 10th day. They're going to keep it until the 14th day. And they're checking that for defect and blemishes in this lamb. We're going to see if they done that in the New Covenant, in the New Testament. And then 13 and 14, we are to keep it as a ordinance forever, a feast forever. So we're looking forward to next week posting more information on the Passover. Hope that this is giving you a good starting point. Like I said, you can go back and watch some of the other videos that's going to bring you up to date on this Fingerprints of Yahweh. Until then, shalom.